I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Emily.
And today I'm going to tell you the story of the Friday the 13th murder of Betty Gore. Her killer admitted to the murder, but was acquitted of the crime at trial. So was this acquittal justified, or should Betty's killer be behind bars?
Well, this is a trial by podcast, so we'll let you be the judge.
Okay, so hello everybody. This is Kelsey here. As you know, we record episodes way far ahead of time. So today you are listening to an episode about Betty Gore. I'm going to put this in the beginning of both episodes, part 1 and part 2. So when we recorded this, I had listened to a couple different podcasts along with all of the research I did. The name of Betty Gore's daughter in those podcasts was pronounced Elisa. And I'm not going to drop names or whatever in case they mispronounce it. I'm not trying to blame someone else. It is my fault. It is Elisa. After we recorded all of these episodes and I did all the research and worked on this for weeks and weeks, and we recorded for hours on end and I edited for hours and hours on end, I went back to rewatch the TV show that I am going to mention in this episode. And they are pronouncing the name Alyssa. Okay, this is the daughter. She's not super involved in the story, but she does play a part. So I just wanted to get ahead of it because I know people are going to be upset about that. And honestly, I cannot re-record and re-edit that name every single time it is taken out. So I greatly, sincerely apologize if it is Alyssa and we're saying Elisa. It is spelled A-L-I-S-A. So you can see how when I'm hearing other people say it, Elisa, I thought, okay, Elisa makes more sense than Alyssa. So I am honestly, I've tried to look it up even since realizing this. I've looked it up multiple places and everyone says it differently. So I'm not even sure which one the right one is. If you want to comment and let me know which one is the right one and you want to do it nicely, please do. I would appreciate it. But just wanted to say that ahead of time. I am very sorry if I am saying it the wrong way. So with that being said, let's get back to the recorded episode that we recorded a long time ago. Okay.
And we're in.
Okay.
I feel like I gotta stop talking like that.
Oh my God, I just got put in a fucking group text.
Oh, mute that bitch.
Yeah. So, hello everybody. Kelsey here. I'm riding the struggle bus today. I still have last night's makeup on, and it is 4:24 p.m. on a Sunday. So
that's Sunday for you.
That's Sunday for me. And yeah, but I'm slap happy. I've got energy today. So.
Me too.
So
I think I hit that point. I also am 2.5 margaritas deep, so. It was a taco bridal shower.
Ooh.
Right? I was like,
Ooh.
Fuck yeah, sign me up. Tacos and margaritas and chips and oh yeah.
All right, so Emily's vibing right
Here
now.
for it.
Emily's vibing. We're about to bring her down. We're about to bring her down. But, so I wanted to start the story with a quick note on sources. So like I said, today I'm going to tell you the story of the murder of Betty Gore. And though I always use an array of sources, one of the main sources that I used for this episode was a series of Texas Monthly articles from 1984 and a book that was written by the same people and goes by the same title. So it's called Love and Death in Silicon Prairie. And both the book and the articles were written by Jim Atkinson and John Bloom, who interviewed a lot of the people that we're going to talk about. And we'll kind of get there. So it is a little bit of a biased perspective just based on the people that they were able to interview. Obviously, they couldn't interview Betty Gore about what happened to her. Mm-hmm. So something to keep in mind, but I would just wanted to give them credit because a lot of great information came from them. So on Friday the 13th in June of 1980, a man named Alan Gore was having trouble getting a hold of his wife, Betty. Alan was on a work trip in St. Paul, Minnesota, while Betty stayed home in Wiley, Texas to take care of the couple's children, who were 7-year-old Elisa and 1-year-old Bethany. It was unlike Betty not to answer the phone, especially when Alan was out of town. Betty was reportedly very, very, very emotionally dependent on Alan, and she hated when he traveled for work. So getting no response from her all day had Alan extremely worried pretty quickly. He decided to call his next-door neighbor, Richard Parker, and asked him to go check on Betty, thinking that maybe the home phone wasn't working or something. So Richard ran over to the house and knocked on the door a few times, but there was no answer.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Parker told Alan that she must be out with friends or something, but Alan knew that Betty wasn't the type to go out unexpectedly, and she didn't actually really have any close friends. So he would have known if she had plans. She's not someone that's like gets a phone call from a friend on a Friday night and she's like, okay, yeah, let's meet for dinner or something. And especially not with a 1-year-old baby in the house. So now at this point, when he hears that Betty wasn't opening the door, he is kind of in panic mode. And the only other person that he could think to call was a woman named Candy Montgomery, who was, I don't want to say Betty's only friend, but it's really the only one that we know of, at least. It was definitely her closest friend. Now, Alan and Betty's daughter, Elisa, was actually at Candy's house earlier that day playing with Candy's daughter. So he thought that maybe she had spoken with Betty, arranging like the pickup of the girls or where the girls were going to stay that night, something along those lines. So he calls and asks Candy if she's seen Betty. But Candy tells Alan that she saw Betty earlier that morning when she stopped by to pick up Elisa's swimsuit. But she says, look, she seemed fine. I haven't seen her since. Kind of saying it didn't really seem like there's much to worry about. She was fine.
Mm-hmm.
So after hanging up with Candy, Alan called the neighbor Richard Parker back and asked him to just try and get in the house any way he can. He's like, He's
like, break a fucking window, get in, do something, make sure somebody's in there.
He needed eyes on his wife. He needed to know what was going on. Now, Parker seemed a little bit hesitant. Like he was like, I don't know how I'm going to get in your house. But he agreed. And the two hung up. But Alan's kind of sitting by the phone, just waiting for him to call back. And as the time ticked by, he just became more and more antsy. So he called another neighbor, who was Jerry McMahon, and asked him to go check too. Jerry then called a third neighbor named Lester Gaylor and asked Lester to join him. He didn't want to go by himself.
They're like, guys, we're forming a party at my house to just check on my wife. So can you just do this for me? Like,
pretty much.
Who else is he going to call?
Pretty much.
Who are you going to call? All your neighbors.
All your neighbors. So outside of the house, the two men bumped into Richard Parker, who was the first guy that Alan called. And Parker actually had a key to the Gore home. He was like a realtor, and he had like a bunch of keys. And he had sold the Gore's house to them. So he realized, I still have this key. So he was able to just unlock the door, and the three men...
He's like debating on how he's going to break in. He's like, I have a key.
Yeah, he didn't want to like just walk in their house, a woman's at home alone with the baby and
like surprise.
Yeah, so you would be creeped out if your neighbor just walked in your front door. Yeah. Like, hey, bro, why do you still have the key to our house?
What doing here?
So the three men go inside, and inside they begin calling out for Betty, but they are getting no answer. Then suddenly the men heard something down the hallway, so they headed in that direction. So peeking into the first door in the hallway, which was the bathroom, Jerry saw blood all over the tile floor. Ooh. And the men knew that Alan was right. Something was very, very wrong. When they entered the next room and flipped on the light, they found 1-year-old Bethany, who was now screaming at the top of her lungs from her crib. She was red and blotchy from crying, and she was covered in her own soil. It was very evident that she had been there for a long time by herself.
Oh,
it reminds me of...
I was literally just going to say that.
Janet Eastburn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just about to say that.
Luckily, Bethany was not in the crib as long as Jana was, but it's very similar. So they explored the other bedrooms looking for Betty, but there was no sign of her. So the men headed out to check out the other side of the house. Off the kitchen was a utility room. Now the door was closed, so Lester opens the door and looks inside, and then he immediately slams it shut, yelling, quote, "Don't go in there. She's dead."
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Now, Lester hadn't actually seen Betty's body, but he saw enough blood inside to know that she was dead. However, Jerry was a little bit bolder, and he did not listen to Lester. He's like, don't go in there. She's
like,
dead. And he's like, I'm going in.
He's like, nah, I need evidence.
Yeah, he immediately opens the door to see for himself, reportedly telling the other men, quote, she's blown her head off, end quote.
Oh, my God.
Now, just moments later, the Gore's home phone rang. Lester picked it up to find that it was Alan on the other line. They had obviously been taking a while, so Alan was just getting antsy, and he figured, okay, if I haven't heard back from them yet, they must still be in the house. So he just calls his own house, and I mean, they're taken aback because they're like, what do we say? We just found his
what do we tell
dead
this
wife.
guy? At that point, they didn't even call the police, right? They just found her.
Right.
And
yeah,
then he
they
calls.
hadn't called the police yet. So the three men tell Alan the same thing that they would later tell the police. They said that the baby was okay, but Betty was dead, and they think she shot herself. Now, Alan was confused how she possibly could have done this because they didn't own a gun. And like we said, Betty is very emotionally dependent on Alan. She doesn't like to do things alone. She doesn't like to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't like to go out of the house by herself. So she's not the type of person to figure out how to go buy a gun by herself, in Alan's opinion.
It doesn't sound like she's the type of person that would it sounds like she would care about leaving her kids behind too.
It
doesn't sound like she's one of those people. Yeah.
She loved her daughters. And so this whole thing just made no sense to him. And he just thought that there's no way that she shot herself. Mm-hmm. And of course, it turns out that he was right. Betty wasn't shot, and Betty had not killed herself. Betty had been murdered, hit with an axe 41 times.
Jeez.
So they basically just decimated her head so badly that they thought
she blew it off and exploded it. Oh my God.
So after hearing the news, Alan did not know what to do. He was shocked and confused, and he had to figure out how to get home because remember, he's on a work trip in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And he just decides, okay, before doing all of that, he needs to call Betty's friend Candy because she's watching Elisa. That's the first step, is make sure someone has Elisa and she's taken care of. And he knows that she needs to stay there overnight and not take Elisa to the house to see, police officers and everything everywhere. Mm-hmm. So he picks up the phone to call Candy. Now, it wasn't really the ideal time for the Montgomerys to receive a phone call, because according to the Texas Monthly Magazine article, Candy and her husband had just started knocking boots when the phone rang. But as soon as she heard that phone ring...
Knocking boots.
Tangent alert, hit the 15-second button 4 times if you don't want to hear the tangent. When I was writing this, my boyfriend came over while I was kind of in the middle of it, and I was like, I need a funny innuendo for sex. What's a funny... So first of all, the least creative person ever on planet Earth, my boyfriend.
Don't give him that job.
He was he had no... I was reading him off and he's laughing. I'm like, no, but I can't use the same one every time. That's the joke, is you call it something different every time. And he... So unhelpful.
Who'd you reach out for? Or was that off the dome?
Huh?
Did you just come to you?
Knocking boots was
pretty
that
good
was
one.
off the dome. That was off
pretty
the
good
dome.
one.
Thanks. I don't know where I heard that before, but yep. So they're knocking boots. The phone rings, but Candy just pauses. She's like, "Hold on." To her husband Pat.
Could be important.
She's like, "Pat, we have to answer the phone." So they pause. She picks up the phone, and as soon as she answered, Alan said, quote, "Candy, I have some bad news. Betty is dead." End quote. Candy asked what happened, and Alan told her that she had been shot and the neighbors found her, because at this point he doesn't know anything about the axe or whatever. He just knows what the neighbors told him.
That's a massive cock block.
I don't think they went back to it.
I mean, if they did, that's
a little fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, this story is real fucked up.
How do you turn back on after you... I don't know.
Yep. So Alan tells her that, the neighbors had found her, and immediately upon hearing this news, Candy began to cry. And
Aww.
yeah, well, You might not feel that way.
Oh,
And Alan asked her to keep Elisa until he could get home, but told her not to tell his daughter what happened. He wanted to tell Elisa himself. So Candy agreed, and Alan hung up the phone, not knowing that he had just asked his wife's killer to take care of their daughter until he returned home.
Oh my God.
Dun dun.
Wait, I have a lot of questions.
They're gonna be answered, my friend. They will be answered. Any
So
you
maybe
wanna?
she did go back to.
That's
maybe
what I
she
was-
did go back to it.
Yeah, she might have. She might have.
She probably did. If she was the killer, she probably did. Because I mean,
Yep.
ew.
This lady is insanity. Purely insane. So
Candy.
let's back it up. Let's start with a little bit of background now. So Betty Gore was actually born, her maiden name was Pomeroy, and she was born in 1950 in Norwich, Kansas.
Can I just say that a lot of your cases have the coolest names?
Isn't this one kind of sad? Like the last name is Gore, and then it was like Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
And like it's very spooky. Like, Gore. And I think actually this
we're
is
looking
gonna
for
be
a woman named Candy.
Yeah. I don't want candy. I'll tell you that.
I don't want candy.
Yeah, I don't want candy though.
No.
So anyway, she was born in 1950 in Norwich, Kansas, and her brother, Ronald Pomeroy, told Oxygen Snapped that, quote, she was very popular. She was involved in all kinds of school events, music, plays, student council. She wanted to be an elementary school teacher, really from the word go, end quote. Betty's interests were very conventional, which I don't mean in a bad way. I just mean that she genuinely enjoyed like all of those normal things that society tells you should enjoy. Mm-hmm. And she genuinely wanted all of the things that society tells a young woman to want. She wanted a husband, babies. She wanted, to be a teacher, to have a career, and she wanted to have a strong connection with God. Now, on top of the popularity that her interests brought, like she was very, people liked her in school. She was kind of, what's the TikTok thing you like? ITGIRL. Yeah.
You know she is that girl.
Yeah, she was that girl. Now, on top of this popularity, though, Betty was also beautiful, which of course always helps.
Beautiful Betty.
She was kind. She had this big smile that everyone talked about, and she was said to they said that she radiated, she just had this innocence about her that made her just likable to everyone, but especially to men.
Her aura was pink.
Oh, are you into auras now?
No, but I saw this place in Cleveland where you can go and get a picture of your aura. Like they do something with your.
Can we do this?
I really
make
want
a TikTok?
to. Yeah, I really want to because they take a picture and they give you a picture, printed out
pink?
picture.
Pink is just feminine,
I don't know. That's just what it was giving me.
Okay.
Just beautiful energy,
yes.
radiating.
I love it.
And she's beautiful.
I love it. Someone tell us in the comments.
Yeah, it's probably bad. I don't know.
Yeah, someone's gonna be like, yeah, it means something horrible.
That just means you're a bitch.
So, anyway, after high school, Betty headed off to college where she met Alan, who was actually the TA in her math class. The two were immediately smitten with each other. They began dating, and by 1970, they were married.
That's cute.
Oh.
I met in math class.
Yep. It is cute.
She helped me with my fractions.
Yeah. Now, less than 2 years later, he was like, do you know what me plus you equals, baby? Marriage. Now.
Check yes for no. Or check... Wait.
check yes for no.
Check yes
Happy
if you want to go out.
Day.
Do you want to go out with me? Check yes or no.
Now, less than 2 years after getting married, the couple's first daughter, Elisa, was born. With the new baby in tow, the couple picked up and moved to Collin County, Texas, where Betty started working as a teacher. Now, despite achieving so many of her life goals, she got married, she became a teacher, she had a baby. Betty found herself beginning to feel somewhat dissatisfied with her life. she didn't enjoy her work as much as she had a really, really hard time getting the students to listen to her. Now, obviously, I didn't know Betty, but from everything I've read about her, she seems to be very timid. She's a very timid woman. She
And like
is
very nice and like
she wants to like
reserved.
keep the peace. And I think sometimes people take advantage of her, and I could see how children, are going to do whatever they can to take advantage of their teacher like that.
Do you know like what grade she taught?
I don't know what grade. It just said elementary school and everything that I read. So,
Dude, yeah, they're assholes. They have no filter. They think they're being nice. Oh, I don't like your fucking shoes.
yeah.
Did you see how fat she looks today?
Yeah.
Dude, no filter.
Yeah. Scary.
Don't like them.
Yeah, that's why children scare me. So
Dude, kids are scary.
on top of just feeling like she was struggling at work, she also was feeling extremely lonely as they were new to the community, and Alan traveled for work all of the time, leaving Betty home alone with Elisa. So she didn't really know anyone. She has to be home to take care of Elisa, so it's hard to like go out and meet people and make friends. Now, in 1978, despite Betty's like rising dissatisfaction, the couple decided to try for another baby. So Betty had it all planned out, even picking out the time frame that she planned to conceive in so she could have the baby over summer break and not have to take any maternity leave from work afterwards. So she's like, this is the week I need you to impregnate me. Like,
We got a week. You got 7 days. Let's move it or lose it.
that's pretty much it. So
Good for her. She put him on a timeline.
yes, it was good for her. It was what she wanted. But according to Alan, this led to very planned, very mechanical, and very boring sex.
Oh.
But it worked because in 1979, the couple welcomed their second daughter, Bethany. So after her birth, though, Betty seemed to struggle with very severe postpartum depression as well as anxiety. It was something that she already struggled with anxiety. We already talked about that. But having the new baby on top of it, and then having she had a lot of separation anxiety when Alan left. It just was causing
I'm
not
sure
only
her hormones were so out of whack and all of her emotions were just all over the place.
Right. And it's hard when your husband's gone all the time and you are the sole caretaker of the children. Like, you don't have the time to focus on yourself as much. And,
Well, yeah, that's a full-time job.
Right. And not only was this causing Betty stress, though, but it was also stressing out Alan because he didn't want his wife to be home alone and lonely and unhappy and whatever, but he also had to travel for work to provide for the family and all of this.
He was stuck in between a rock and a hard place.
Right. And from everything I read, it just sounds like it was a very, very, very codependent relationship. Like Alan really felt like he was completely responsible for Betty's happiness or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Because all of her joy and happiness and emotions just came from Alan being around, which if you've ever been that person to somebody is very stressful on both sides and can be very emotionally debilitating and emotionally draining. So
For sure.
codependency is no bueno.
No.
Now, while Betty didn't know many people in Wiley at first, the couple chose it because on paper, it was an idyllic place to raise a family. It was a quiet, small town with less than 3,200 residents in 1980. That is tiny.
3,200?
Yes, it is tiny. And it was a rural area.
We talked about that word. Oh my
I did
God.
last time.
Yeah. Well, you're a good pronouncer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So they lived in a rural area and it was seen as a better place to raise kids than raising them in the nearby city. These people, a lot of these people, they were, from rural areas. It's very family centric. It's very there's a lot of religious ideology in these areas, things like that. So that's why Wiley was seen as this local small community that would help you raise your kids up right.
I feel like that's kind of how our hometown was too. People move there, so they're like, oh, well, this is kind of out not in like a city. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they're not as close to all
There's
the
less
rude people.
riffraff.
Yeah.
There's less riffraff than in a city. So also a part of this community were, of course, Candy Montgomery and her husband, Pat, and their children. So Candy and Pat had actually met while they were both working at Texas Instruments. Pat was an electrical engineer and Candy was the pretty blonde secretary. Now, I know that's like a little bit of a reductive way to describe her, but trust me, by the end of this story, you won't feel defensive of
You'll be calling
feelings.
her a bitch yourself.
Yeah,
So
so I think she sucks.
yeah.
So by the time the couple moved to Wiley in 1977, Pat was bringing home $70,000 a year, which is
Damn.
equal to about $353,000 a year today.
Damn.
So he was bringing in that money, honey.
Yeah.
Now, Pat supported the couple's lifestyle, giving 28-year-old Candy and the couple's 2 children everything they could possibly need. Still, Candy was bored by the traditional housewife lifestyle. In my opinion, she sounds like the type of person who's like constantly seeking novelty, anything new. She wants an exciting, adventurous spirit type of thing.
And nothing is ever enough.
Yes. Yeah. That can be a problem. I say this as someone who is a novelty seeker.
Same.
Yeah, it can be an issue. And you should talk to your therapist about it, my friends. Now, both families, so the Montgomerys and the Gores, were active members of the Methodist Church of Lucas, where their paths first cross. All 4, so Candy, Pat, Alan, and Betty, were
They're church
extremely
friends.
engaged in church activities, and their social lives pretty much revolved around their church community.
Sounds like a cult, but okay.
But okay. Weird flex, but okay. I respect it. You do you, boo-boo. Now, among them, Candy stood out for her exceptional involvement in church events. Unlike Betty, who preferred to stay at home with the children, was kind of just a homebody, Candy thrived in a more social setting. She wasn't content with spending her days cooking and cleaning. Instead, she relished being out and about, embracing a busier lifestyle.
She's like, I don't got time to clean and cook. I got places to be.
As I was writing this, I was like, this is me and Emily.
Literally, though. Please let me stay at home and cook and clean. I would say clean. I like to clean.
You don't like to cook?
Not a lot, no. I don't like I think the kitchen is too small.
Yeah.
I do
it's
not
the
enjoy
best
cooking in that kitchen.
Yeah. But no, Emily's totally like more like, and by the way, like
I don't like to be proud of the fact that I am a housewife.
you're not I'm not calling you a
being married.
housewife. No, I'm just saying you're more of like an introvert. Like you like your alone time. You like Emily's house is like decorated so perfectly and everything. Like mine's a disaster of like mismatched furniture and everything. Like
No, you have good style. I feel like that's one of my hobbies. I was thinking about this the other day,
for sure.
actually.
Because
I
it
spend
goes
way
with
too much
shopping.
money.
That's your
Unfortunately,
number one
yes,
hobby.
a very expensive hobby.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love home decor and cozy stuff.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause
excited.
I spend most of my time there. It's my happy place.
I just got a new apartment, so Emily's gonna have to go shopping with me and help me pick stuff out.
It's my favorite thing to do ever.
One day when I have money, because right now I don't. Now, so they're me and Emily. Now, when Candy first married Pat, she was elated. She was very excited. He was successful. He was wealthy. He was a catch. But as the years went on and the monotony of being a housewife and a mother took over, she found herself growing more and more dissatisfied.
That's why you don't marry for money, ladies.
Yes, yes. Candy felt profoundly unfulfilled in her marriage to Pat. She often sensed that he dismissed her interests and contributions, which he showed little enthusiasm for despite her efforts. After she enrolled in a writing class, he never showed any interest in the things that she wrote. So it was just every single time she's trying to like connect with him, he's kind of just like brushing her off.
Yeah, she's like, oh, look at, like, I joined this writing class. You want to read what I wrote? And he's like, nah, not really.
Yeah.
She's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I get it. I get that.
This is my boyfriend with the podcast. Now, craving meaningful conversations and excitement, she felt that the relationship had lost its spark. At one point, she even confided in friends that she was seeking someone outside the marriage to bring the passion and connection that she longed for.
Someone or just anyone?
At this point, when she's telling the friends that, just anyone. She's like
hit it.
I got, yeah, hit it. What's that song?
Hit it. Wait.
Is that just
Mix it in. No, it's a Ariana Grande song.
Yeah. Okay.
I think.
I don't remember. Now, on a hot summer day in 1978, while Candy and Alan were playing church volleyball, the two both went for the ball at the same time and bumped into each other. According to Love and Death, Candy later said that this was the first time she ever got close enough to Alan to smell him.
Oh my God.
And apparently, he smelled sexy.
The pheromones.
Sexy. It was his smell. Now, this is when she first wondered if Alan Gore might be that man that would want to have an affair with her. Yes, that special someone outside of her marriage.
They had a little meet cute on the church volleyball court, and she's like, ooh, I'm going to cheat on my husband with him.
Yep, pretty much.
What a place to meet somebody at the church volleyball court.
Yeah.
Where you're both married with
children.
What a
place. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, but she's kind of thinking, maybe Alan's the guy, but she wasn't sure how Alan felt about it. So she began looking for clues.
Do I smell good too?
Yeah, well, she's like, Alan, what do I smell like? What do I smell
you
like?
You like it?
Yeah, and it's like sweaty church volleyball.
Yeah, they're playing volleyball. Like, I'm assuming sweaty, the sand. I don't know. Ew.
Now, she began to observe his behavior, his behavior more closely, noting yes. Noting that Alan seemed to tease her more than the other women in church, like little things like this were giving her like, okay, maybe he's like being flirty.
Oh my God, he's talking to me. He is in love with me.
Yeah, like she's saying, oh, he would tease me more often, but really he's like, Candy, can you shut the fuck up?
Yeah, he's
like,
being serious.
Oh, Alan, you're so funny. Just kidding. I don't think.
Candy's the most annoying bitch I've ever met, and like such a joke.
Yeah, we're joking. I don't actually think that that's how it was, but I wish it was.
That's what
I
she
wish
thinks.
he was just dogging
That's
her.
how she thinks.
Now, they often lingered in the parking lot together, chatting after choir practices, and she suspected that his interactions with her carried a subtle flirtatious undertone.
Of course she did.
Intrigued by these signs, she decided to investigate further to determine if her suspicions were accurate. One night after choir practice, Candy approached Alan in the parking lot as he was about to get into his car. She told him that she needed to discuss something with him that had been troubling her. So concerned, Alan invited her to talk right then. He's like, okay, just get in my car and let's just talk about it now, because he's a little bit like taken aback by this.
So Betty is not ever at these functions, right? Because she's like usually at home.
I don't believe she's a part of the choir. And so I don't think she's never at these functions, but like the choir ones. And I don't know. Like, Betty,
was she
obviously.
At the volleyball game, were they?
I don't think she was at the volleyball game that day when they bumped into each other and the sexy smell was up everybody's noses. But so they both get into Alan's car. And once inside, Candy revealed that she found him attractive and she was tired of keeping her feelings to herself. So she said she just wanted to express them openly so she could clear her mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
there it is.
Without giving Alan even a moment to respond, she basically just tells him this and then immediately gets out of the car and like rushes over to her own car and gets in and drives away.
Okay.
So Alan was left pretty stunned. And Candy was widely regarded as like one of the most attractive women in their church community. And Alan he's kind of described as like very plain, very shy. And he kind of just felt that he didn't really measure up to Candy. Like this was like a very big compliment for Candy Montgomery to find Alan Gore attractive.
She's like the popular girl and he's like the nerdy guy.
Yeah, for sure. And if you see pictures, he ain't nothing to write home about. I'm sorry. He kind of sucks. He's about to, spoiler alert, he's going to cheat on his wife. So I think we get to make fun of him.
I really had high hopes for him too.
Yeah. No, I wish. But
God damn it.
Now, despite his initial shock, he was flattered, and he found himself unable to stop thinking about Candy afterward.
This makes me upset.
Alan loved his wife, but he was very bored with their sex life, and he was feeling unfulfilled. He wasn't feeling connected to Betty. They didn't have that passion and romance that Alan wanted. So not even 2 weeks after Candy came clean about her feelings, Alan brought the topic back up, and Candy then suggested that the two should have an affair. Now, at first, Alan declines, saying that he loved his wife and he didn't want to hurt her. Candy explained that she just wanted sex, nothing more, but that she understood and promised she would not bring it up again. Now, I want to pause, and this is somewhat of a tangent, but this is a tangent about the story. So I first heard of this case because there is a show based off the book that I was talking about at the top of the show that I use as like one of the main sources called Love and Death. Uh-huh. And there's a show on HBO based off that book called Love and Death.
Oh.
And I'll tell you all my thoughts on the book at the end of the case because I don't want to like spoiler anything. But in the show, Alan is really portrayed, and it's based off this book and based off interviews with some of these people. Mm-hmm. He is very timid, very shy, very reserved. And you get the impression from everything Alan says that he did really love his wife. Mm-hmm. I think that it's not the best portrayal of him. Like, yeah. I think he fucking sucks. I think that show gave him too much credit.
Yeah.
But I wanted
if you love your wife, you're not going to fucking cheat on her.
Right. But I wanted to mention the show because I watched the show, and when it was over, I actually watched this when I was living with you. Mm-hmm. I started it at like 6 p.m. one night. I stayed up till 2 a.m. on a fucking work night. Watched the entire show in one night. I'm not joking. And I have not done that in years. It is so good. It's with Elizabeth Olsen.
Oh, I love her.
It is so good. And Betty is played by... Elizabeth Olsen plays Candy. And then Betty is played by... Who's the girl from American Horror Story? Is it Lily Rabe? Lily Rabe? Something Rabe.
American Horror Story.
She played the nun.
Oh, the blonde?
Yes. I think it's Lily Rabe.
I don't know if I've ever actually looked up her name.
But she plays Betty Gore, and she's fantastic in it, and the show is really good. I don't really know how the daughters feel about this show.
Yeah, you're right. It is Lily Rabe.
Lily Rabe, yeah. She's fantastic. So anyway, I just would say that if you watch this show, just keep in mind, like, it takes artistic liberties, I think, and
the dramatization.
I think, yeah, they give Alan way too much credit in that show because they kind of make it seem like Candy is kind of like not tricking Alan into this, but Candy is like manipulating him into this, and I'm
like giving him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah,
like,
he's a grown ass man. He could have said no, but he doesn't.
Church going man.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, at first he denies her. She's saying, okay, I understand. I promise I won't bring it up again. And like I said, if you're cheering for Alan at this point, just stop, because a few weeks later,
put it back down.
Alan called Candy to wish her a happy 29th birthday. And on this phone call, he asked her to get lunch with him in a nearby town so they could talk. Of course, Candy agrees. And the two decided that, like, during this discussion, if they were going to have an affair, that they needed to have rules to ensure that neither one of them would catch feelings. They spent weeks discussing all the possibilities of how someone could catch feelings or how they could get caught. And they came up with rules for every scenario that they had thought of.
Sounds like they're catching feelings doing that part.
Is that right?
That's part of catching feelings.
So here, I wanted to share with you some of the rules. So
these, not ready for these.
Number one, if either party wanted to end the affair at any point, it would be over with no questions asked. Number two, if either caught feelings, it would end. And obviously, these are not verbatim. They weren't saying caught feelings in the 80s. Now, if they ever wanted to start or if either of them ever started taking risks that could possibly get them caught, it would end. All expenses would be split evenly between the two of them. They would only meet in hotel rooms during Alan's 2-hour lunch break, and Candy would bring lunch to save time. So Candy's just making this man sandwiches and then meeting up with him in a dusty motel.
It sounds like they're planning a whole ass relationship.
Yeah. So they would only meet once every 2 weeks, and they would both take showers after their rendezvous just to make sure that they didn't smell like each other.
They're serial cheaters is what they're doing. They're like, let's plan this out.
And they're so type A. They're like,
you gotta shower after. We have to eat during your lunch break, so we have to be
literally,
efficient.
it was every other Friday.
Yeah.
Every other Friday, every 2 weeks. I'm like, first of all, Candy, if you're looking for these like sparks and whatever, like you're only gonna
a planned sex date
every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like every 2 weeks, that just seems
that blows my
odd.
mind that they're not saying like, oh, do we do this like one time? They're like planning to do it every 2 weeks, like a fucking payday.
They met for weeks before ever doing, before anything physical ever happened between them. They're just planning it out for weeks. I'm like, this is fucking weird.
They're going on dates every fucking week for weeks, planning out their affair.
Now,
yeah, that is really fucking weird.
Like I said, after weeks of putting all this planning together,
whatever that shit was,
they finally decided on a start date for their affair. December 12th, 1978 was
like,
go time.
What's our first anniversary of our fuck day gonna be?
Yeah, happy fuck day anniversary.
Happy affair day anniversary.
Now, that day, the pair met at the Como Motel where they had sex. Candy later says that after putting her tongue in Alan's mouth, it was obvious that he had never French kissed anyone before. Now, I would like to say this is the problem with men. At this point, Betty was pregnant with their second child, so you've impregnated your wife twice, but you've never French kissed her. Like,
but wait,
is
he just really fucking bad at it?
I think I think he was not very sexually experienced. Okay,
right.
Again, his wife is pregnant with their second child during this time. They're meeting every other Friday, starting December 12th, 1978. But after less than 3 months, Candy wanted to end the affair. She said the sex was good, but not great. And it didn't seem to be getting any better over time, which was what she expected. She thought it was like,
I will learn you.
Yes, but it wasn't happening. And it wasn't the excitement or fireworks that Candy was looking for. However, she did find that she truly enjoyed Alan's company and vice versa. So
she's like, I just like to smell you, and that's it.
Yeah, the smell is really sexy, but
the
nothing else.
Smell's great, but nothing else.
So their relationship began to feel less like two adultering lovers and more like best friends just hanging out. And Candy worried that it was becoming too emotionally like heavy. Like it was more emotions based than it was like
physically.
Physically.
Yeah.
Right. So she voiced this to Alan and Alan agreed. And the two decided to break the affair off. Only to start it back up again not long after, like just a few weeks later.
Of course.
So despite the ongoing affair, Candy and Alan both continued participating in church and social activities together with their respective spouses in tow as if nothing was happening.
Why are they not afraid they're going to catch on fire as soon as they walk in the church?
Right? Right?
I've never cheated on somebody, and I feel like I'm going to catch on fire if I walk into a church.
Oh, my God. Right? Now, at one point, when church members were looking for someone to host a dinner party at their home, Candy volunteered to have. She's like, oh, we can do it at my house. Even though she knew that this dinner party was actually a surprise baby shower for Betty, Alan's wife, who was pregnant with his baby.
She's like, let me throw it.
She's like, yeah, we can do it at my house.
Dude, too far.
Happy having a baby, Betty.
Too far.
That is
way too far.
That's disgusting. And the fact that Alan let her do that without fucking saying anything.
So disrespectful.
Like, could you imagine finding that out?
Oh, I would chop off his dick.
That is some Tristan Trash Thompson shit, dude.
Oh, 100%. Oh my God.
Anyway, Alan and Betty's daughter, Bethany, was born later on in July of 1979. And after the birth of his second daughter, Alan began to feel guilty about the affair and about leaving Betty to take care of the baby alone while he was with Candy.
Oh, wow. Just now he's feeling guilty?
You're so nice, Alan. What a nice guy.
Oh, you have feelings now for your child?
Oh,
and your wife?
Yeah. Seriously.
Get fucked, dude.
Now, though she was never formally diagnosed, to my knowledge, there are reports that speculated that Betty was experiencing postpartum depression, like I think I mentioned earlier in this episode. And this, of course, only added to the guilt that Alan was feeling. He felt he was worried. He knew what he was doing was wrong, and so on. Now,
that's the worst part, is that people that do cheat are like, I knew it was bad, but it was fun, so that's why I continue to do it. Like,
just break up with your fucking partner.
Literally, like grow some fucking balls. If you don't want to be with them, then don't just do shit behind their back. Like, that's fucked up.
But that's the thing.
They're always gonna find out.
I think that people who, I'm not saying everyone who has cheated or whatever, but I think these people who like are cheaters, like, I know some people just make mistakes, but I think most people who like are grown adults that cheat is like they do it because they don't want to end their relationship. You know what I mean? They want both, and it's like, well, you don't fucking get to have it. I've told every boy I've ever dated, I'm like, just if you are at somewhere and you're like, this girl, oh, I gotta touch her boobs.
Yeah.
Just call me and break up with me.
Literally. If it's between me and another person, pick the other person.
Hey, this is what I say to them. It's like, just call me and break up with me first. Do whatever you got to do. You're going to have a better chance of fucking staying with me if you do that.
And be honest about it.
Because then when we're broken up,
yeah.
I would be like, if you just cheated on me, bye-bye. Bye-bye. So one Thursday night, after returning from a visit to Betty's parents, Alan and Betty had a disagreement. Alan insisted on going to work the next day, even though he usually would have taken the day off after getting back so late from a trip. So Betty thought this was, she's like, why?
He was looking forward to the 2-hour fucking lunch break where he gets to fuck Candy.
Right, exactly. So she just was very upset by this. She's like, why do you have to go to work? Just take the day off and stay home and whatever.
That makes me so sad knowing she's like very like emotionally attached to him, and I'm sure she's like, what am I doing wrong? Like,
I feel so hard for this woman. Me too. I feel so hard for her. So obviously this upset Betty, but Alan knew that Candy would be waiting for him at the motel during his lunch break. And
of course he did.
Obviously this is before cell phones. You can't just shoot her a text and say, hey, can't make it tomorrow. Can we reschedule? So
he's more concerned about his fuck buddy than his wife, who just had their second child and who's clearly going through it.
Right. 100%. Now, under pressure from Betty to stay home, Alan had to find a way to cancel his plans with Candy without revealing the true, he couldn't tell Betty, oh, I got to call Candy because we have plans to meet up at lunch tomorrow. So he basically made up this excuse that he had to talk to her about something about church choir. And he called Candy from the kitchen while Betty was over in the bedroom, and was kind of just telling her over the phone, making up this story about how he can't come to church practice, choir practice or whatever.
My voice hurts. I can't be at church.
Without saying what day or where, but Candy got the gist of it, and she was angry. And after
fuck off, Candy.
So she's mad. Alan is on the phone for longer than he should have been if he was really just
saying,
canceling
hey, I
this
can't
quick
come
thing.
to fucking choir.
Right, exactly. So he gets off the phone and goes into the bedroom, and Betty looked at him and said, gee, that sure was a long conversation.
Oh, she already knew. She knows. Yeah,
I think she's starting to figure it out.
Because she's not no fucking dummy.
She ain't no fucking dummy. Now, 2 weeks later, Alan did meet up with Candy for one of their daytime hacky sack sessions.
What was your other one? Fucking knocking boots?
Knocking boots, I think, is a common one, but hacky sack, that's where I was trying to be creative.
They got to hacky sacking. That's a good one.
Thank you. I was proud of that one. Tyler didn't think it was funny, but he was wrong. Now, they met up for one of their daytime hacky sack sessions. And that night, Betty tried to pull moves on Alan when he got home. And this was like for the first time since the baby was born. They had not had relations together.
Yeah.
And according to the Texas Monthly article, this was the first and only time Betty had ever tried to initiate sex. Every other time, it had come from Alan. But this time, Alan was not able to set up the tent as he was tired from his boot knocking session earlier that afternoon.
Couldn't get the soldier to salute.
See, this is why did I ask Tyler? He's so uncreative. I should have called you. The soldier would not salute. He's not
standing at attention.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that makes me sad for Betty.
Dude, yes, we're so laughing at. Sorry, I wrote it in a funny way, which maybe I shouldn't have, but really, this was devastating to Betty. And I mean, you could understand that. Like, you just had a baby, you have all these hormones, and she was just crushed. She would like.
Well, that, and I'm sure the fucking phone call didn't make her feel any better, and I'm sure
and this is 2 weeks after the phone call. So like,
yeah, he probably hasn't been initiating anything with her because he's getting it from Candy. So she's like, well, maybe if I initiate it, maybe he'll like, maybe we'll get back together. Like, the spark will rekindle or whatever. And he's like, sorry.
Exactly.
I got a Limp Biscuit.
Biscuit, that's so good. So, yeah, exactly. I think all of those things are right. She was humiliated, like she just was crying and just she felt humiliated, and she just thought that
so sad.
She thought Alan wasn't attracted to her anymore because she had gained weight from having the baby, or like maybe he just didn't love her anymore.
Yeah,
that's kind of the way that they tell the story. Obviously, though, that's not Betty's words. That's from Alan's perspective. Was that these are all of the things that he thought she was kind of like feeling at that time, but. Betty's at home shattered. So the next time that Alan saw Candy, he told her that they had to end things. Now, Candy was upset. At this point, she had fallen in love with Alan.
Breaking all their fucking rules.
Right? But they had made those rules for a reason. So she said she understood. She asked Alan if they could see each other just once more. And he agreed. Because
it's fucking Alan.
Because he's just a fucking stand-up guy.
He's a dirtbag.
So they met up one last time at the Como Motel, had sex, and then laid in bed talking for an hour and a half, discussing how life would be without each other. According to the Texas Monthly article, Candy told Alan, quote, "I love you so much, Alan. I don't know if I can make it if we break up," end quote. To which Alan responded, quote, "Betty wants to go to marriage encounter now," end quote.
What did he say?
Betty wants to go to marriage encounter. Marriage encounter is like a weekend away. It's like marriage counseling. I'm going to get into the details in just a second. But yeah, she's like, "I love you so much, Alan. I don't know if we can make it if we break up." And he goes, "Me and Betty are going to counseling." I'm like, Alan he comes across, and maybe I'm just biased because I watched that show. Like, he just is such a dummy.
Yeah.
Like, for real, just so emotionally unintelligent when it comes to women. Now,
poor Betty.
Like I said, Marriage Encounter was basically like this intensive therapy weekend for married couples, obviously. And they had heard about it from some of the other couples from church because they're like, "We did this marriage encounter. Oh my God, and now we love each other again."
This church sounds like a fucking nightmare.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Sorry, but
yeah.
If that many people are going to church and like wedding, like marriage counseling, I don't know.
Yeah, the marriage encounter is like at the end of the weekend, everyone like renews their vows. Like, they just do a huge fucking wedding ceremony where everyone gets like remarried. It's a whole shebang.
Yeah, it's
a whole shebang for sure.
I mean, if that floats your boat.
Yeah, it floated theirs. It really did. So Alan, like, Betty had actually brought up marriage encounter before, and Alan didn't want to do it. And now he's like, "All right, we should probably fix
He's
some
like, well,
things.
I can't be with Candy, so I guess we should probably do something about our relationship.
Right. Now, from the moment the two arrived to the moment they left, how it works at Marriage Encounter is they had to be together every second. They weren't allowed to watch TV or read books or newspapers the whole weekend. They were supposed to be there to focus on their spouse. And really, the whole thing is about communication. You're supposed to be honest with your feelings and just try to communicate with each other. And everyone that goes to this marriage encounter is given notebooks, and they're told, like, they're given all these prompts to write letters back and forth to each other. Like, you know, what is your favorite thing about your spouse, or what is one thing you guys struggle with? And it's all about putting your feelings down on paper so you can, you know, read each other's feelings and, like, learn how to communicate better, really.
I feel like Alan's such an idiot that he will confess everything that he's done.
I feel like Alan, you know, when you see SpongeBob's writing on SpongeBob, and it's like he like puts a circle above his eye. That's just what I feel like his handwriting
He
looks
circles
like.
his eyes.
He just gives me, he has big dum-dum energy for sure.
Which I feel like I just said that he's a big dummy, so he would confess. I don't think he would be a dummy for confessing. I think he would be a dummy because I think he would accidentally confess to this shit. Like,
Well, I will give you a spoiler. He does not confess.
oh, he doesn't. Okay,
But also, I feel like
he's still
that
dumb.
was a dummy move
Yeah,
because
he's still dumb.
the
That's
whole
still
point
dumb.
is to be honest with your spouse. I don't know.
Yeah,
Or just don't go to the marriage encounter thing.
maybe just don't cheat on your wife. That's a start.
Now, like I said, to finish off the weekend, the couple, along with all the other couples in Marriage Encounter, renewed their vows in front of everyone before heading home, feeling refreshed and excited about their marriage. According to Alan, they felt like reinvigorated by this whole thing. Like it was everyone had been raving about it at church, and it was like it lived up to their expectations. They're like, "Oh my God, that was amazing. We're so much closer and more connected now."
Well, maybe I
All
shouldn't
of
knock it
this.
until I tried, I guess.
Now, on their way home, they stopped to pick up the kids from Candy's house, as she had been babysitting them while Alan and Betty were at Marriage Encounter.
He really is such a dumbass, though, because, like, how do you think that's okay? He's like, oh, well, maybe I can
Candy
see
is
her
such
more.
a bitch.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Why are you agreeing to watch the kids? Like, that's just something. I don't have kids, so I can't imagine. But just like, imagine finding out not only your husband is cheating on you with your fucking only friend, but then that your kids like love this woman and are around this woman all the time,
They're like,
and
"Oh,
that
stepmommy."
like this woman just didn't care. Like that
I
is like,
feel
don't
like that's-
fuck with someone's kids, dude.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
feel
me
like
mad.
that's more on Alan, though. I feel like
It's on
that's
both of them.
That's on him to not let your fucking
I
kids
wouldn't-
be around and be taken care of by your mistress.
Right.
That's just, I don't know. That's just personal opinion.
Yeah. It's fucked up from every side, really.
Yeah.
So after the weekend, Alan and Candy met up again to talk. Of course. Alan told Candy that the weekend was great for him and Betty, and the two agreed that the affair was definitely over.
Mm-hmm.
They were both very sad, but they knew it was for the best. Now, after hearing about Alan and Betty's transformative experience with Marriage Encounter, Candy and Pat decided to give it a shot.
Jesus.
Now, according to Candy, they had a good time, but it didn't have the same like profound impact on the marriage like it had for Alan and Betty. A huge part of the marriage encounter was, like I said, to write love letters back and forth to each other to explain their feelings. So soon after they returned home from the weekend, Pat was like thinking about it, and he's like, "Oh, I remember like we used to write love letters like when we first started dating, like earlier in the relationship." And he knew that Candy had kept some of them. So he goes looking through Candy's things in search of like this old love letter that he had written her. But instead, he finds a love letter from Alan Gore.
Oh.
Now, so Pat knows
Poor Pat.
about this affair, and he does go to Candy about it, and Candy admits it.
So wait, did he find this before or after they got home from the weekend?
This was after they got home from the
Okay.
weekend. So Candy admits it, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later on, but Pat chose to forgive Candy. Candy explained that it was over now, and that's why they had done the marriage encounter, and she didn't want to be with Alan. She wanted to make their marriage work. And Pat also felt like he played a role in this, because what we were saying before about how Candy, she was taking this writing class and Pat
He wasn't like really interested
blowing
in
her
anything she
off,
did.
and he wasn't interested in any of her interests, and like really wasn't making an effort to connect with her. So he felt like, okay, I can see where she felt alone and why maybe she would have wanted to go elsewhere for connection.
Yeah.
So they really felt like
Very mature, honestly. Like, that's a very mature way to look at it, I guess.
right. I wouldn't be that mature.
No. Same.
But like it really does depend. I think in some circumstances, someone might say that's the reason they cheated, and it's kind of an excuse to make themselves feel better about what they did.
Yeah.
But I can also see that in some scenarios, like that really could be the case. So I think Candy's full of shit. And
Oh yeah, 100%.
yeah, I think probably that played a role, but I'm not going to talk too much about this, but Candy did have another affair after Alan with this other guy.
Oh.
So like Candy, I think she was just one of those people that could never be like fully satisfied.
Yeah.
That's
Which
the impression
sucks.
that I get.
That sucks, but like also she sounds like a shitty person, so that's
Right.
like a personal problem.
Yeah. So anyway, moral of the story is that Pat now knows about the affair. He knows it was with Alan, and he has chosen to forgive Candy, and he never like brings it up to anybody.
I was gonna ask, did they like make a thing like don't say anything to Betty or Alan? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
So she does tell Alan that Pat knows.
Okay.
So now
I'm sure Alan's shitting himself.
at this point, everybody knows except for Betty.
Oh, that makes me even sadder.
Isn't that
that breaks my heart. Yeah.
Isn't that
I
fucked?
feel so bad for her.
Now, on Friday, June 13th, Alan had to head to St. Paul, Minnesota for a weekend work trip. Now, he was not looking forward to this trip, as he knew that Betty hated nothing more than being left alone, especially on a weekend. This thought just caused major anxiety for Alan, but he tried to reassure himself that this time wouldn't be as bad as it usually was, thanks to the fact that Betty had something to look forward to. You see, the following week, the couple was scheduled to fly to Europe for a vacation, just the two of them. So this was going to be like one of the first trips they ever took without the kids. And
Yeah.
so Betty was really excited. So he's like, okay, this weekend's going to be stressful. I know she's going to be really upset, but we're doing this big trip next week, and she knows that. And that's kind of just like, you can find
like
a little
the light
bit of
at the end of the
solace.
tunnel. Yeah.
Exactly. So Alan's hopes of a purely smooth departure were dashed when Betty broke down crying before he left.
Oh.
Betty was upset because her period was late, and she was worried that she was pregnant again. Now, as much as she loved being a mother, Betty was not ready for another baby. Bethany was still an infant, and Betty was still struggling with depression. And luckily, Alan was kind of, at this point, he's just like a pro at calming her down and just quelling her fears. So he was able to calm her down before he left, and he promised to call her. He's like, don't worry, we can talk about this when I get back. We're going to go to Europe. It's going to be amazing. And he's like, as soon as I get to the airport, I'll call you. Like, I'm going to keep, he's going to every step of the way. Because again, no cell phones. So it's like, you got to be somewhere. So he's like, I'll call you when I get to the airport, not even when I land in the other place.
Yeah.
But of course, when he makes this call, Betty does not answer.
Damn, that was quick.
Now, after Alan left the house for the trip, Betty received a call from Candy. So Elisa, the daughter, had slept at the Montgomery's house the night before, and she wanted to sleep over again that night. So Candy called Betty to ask for her permission, and Betty said that that was all right, but that Elisa would need her swimsuit for the girls' swim practice that evening. Candy said it was no problem. Like, I'll stop by and pick it up after I drop the kids off at Bible school. So Candy arrives at the Gore's home around 10 a.m. that day, and Betty invites her in. Now, please remember, this is very important, that the following events are according to Candy, as reported by Atkinson and Bloom in Love and Death.
So, because nobody actually knows what really happened.
Candy is the only one alive to speak on what happened.
Damn.
This is what Candy says happened. I am not saying that this is fact. I am telling you that this is what Candy says happened.
Damn.
I'm going to tell the story as congruently as I can, but I want you to have that knowledge in your head.
Yeah.
So
sounds like never mind. Just keep going.
So according to Candy, and according to how it's portrayed in this book and the shows about this case and everything, once she was inside the home, Betty asked Candy, quote, "Candy, are you having an affair with Alan?"
Damn.
End quote. Candy told her no. And technically she wasn't lying. Their affair by this point had stopped months before this. Like they hadn't been seeing each other in months. And Candy had actually had that second affair with that other guy.
Yeah.
Betty then asked if they had had an affair in the past, to which Candy responded, quote, "Yes, but it was a long time ago. Did Alan tell you?" End quote.
Ooh.
Again, according to Candy, Betty just stared blankly back at her. She then told Candy to wait there a moment and walked over to the utility room. She disappeared behind the door for a moment before promptly reappearing, holding a 3-foot axe. Betty then allegedly told Candy, quote, "Well, don't see him again," end quote.
Damn.
Just standing in the doorway holding an axe, don't see him again.
That doesn't sound like something she would do, so I am taking that with a very heavy grain of salt.
Now, Candy claims that she calmly told Betty that maybe it was better if she went to pick Elisa up and just brought her back home instead of having her spend the night. But Betty said no. She told Candy that she didn't want to see her again and that she should leave and keep Elisa overnight. At this point, Betty kind of set the axe down on the ground and leaned it against the wall and walked away from it. So she's no longer holding the axe. She then instructed Candy to go into the utility room and grab Elisa's swimsuit that was on top of the washer. And she said, "You go grab that and I'm going to go get a towel." Now, remember, that doorway of the utility room is where she set the axe down and it's just leaning against the wall. Now, if I were Candy, I would be outie fucking 5,000 so
Same.
quick.
I'd be out the butt.
There would be dust left behind like Roadrunner. Like you would see my wind. You would see my
I'd be
wind.
running so fast that my feet wouldn't move in cartoon style.
Right. Exactly. Now, Betty walks away. She goes to grab this towel. Candy goes into the utility room, grabs the swimsuit. And when Betty went to hand the towel to Candy, they're kind of standing in the doorway of the utility room.
With the axe in between them. Leaning on the...
With the axe very close by.
Yeah.
Leaning against the wall. When Betty went to hand the towel to Candy, Candy said that she could see the pain in Betty's eyes. She says that she reached out to touch Betty's arm, telling her, quote, "Oh, Betty, I'm so sorry," end quote. Candy claims that Betty then shoved her back into the utility room and grabbed the axe, yelling, quote, "You can't have him. I'm having a baby. You can't have him," end quote. Now, she was still holding the axe downward with the blade to the floor. So she's holding it by her side. It's not like she's holding it up, like raising it like a baseball bat, like about to swing at her. She's just holding it. So it's still very threatening.
Yeah.
But not like...
To me, that's like, I'm going to get the fuck out of here right now.
Yeah. It's not good. So... because she's holding it downward, Candy actually reached out and grabbed the handle of the axe while trying to beg like she's just begging Betty to stop, just saying, I don't want Alan. It's okay. Like I don't want Alan. I don't want Alan.
Yeah.
But then Candy claims that Betty looked at her and said, quote, "I've got to kill you," end quote. And then lifted the axe over her shoulder and swung it at Candy, slicing Candy's toe open. Candy then grabbed onto the axe and the two women wrestled over it. Eventually, Candy was able to take the axe from Betty. Betty stumbled and Candy swung the axe into the back of Betty's head.
God.
Candy says that she then tried to run away, absolutely terrified. But when she reached the door, Betty had caught up to her. And despite her profuse bleeding, she was able to stop Candy from getting the door open. Candy says that she begged Betty to let her go, but Betty said she couldn't. So Candy picked up the axe again, and the two fought over it again. Candy kept trying to tell Betty she didn't want Alan. And at one point, Betty, who was now holding the axe, looked at Candy and said, shh.
Ooh, that gave me chills.
Now,
I'm on the edge of my fucking seat, dude. This is crazy. This is fucking wild.
And the whole time they're fighting over this axe, they're just slipping and sliding.
Oh, well,
in
yeah,
Betty's
I'm sure
blood,
her head
that's
is just fucking a waterfall of blood at this point.
Right. Now, according to a psychologist who later evaluated Candy, this shushing flipped a switch in Candy's subconscious. Candy shoved Betty, took the axe from her, raised it above her head, and took a second swing at Betty Gore. There would be 39 more swings to follow.
Jesus.
In total, Betty suffered 41 chop wounds. Her autopsy would later show that only one of these wounds did not bleed, meaning that for the first 40 of these swings, Betty's heart was beating and she was alive.
Oh my God. Ooh. Yeah, that's rough.
So.
That's fucking rough. Ow.
Now, if you remember at the top of the show, I told you Candy is acquitted at trial.
Oh, what the fuck?
On self-defense.
Are you fucking kidding me? Was Betty actually pregnant?
She wasn't.
She wasn't? Oh, then dude, fucking Candy's lying. For sure. Because then there was blood in the bathroom too, wasn't there?
Yes.
When they got there, they found blood in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Because we'll talk about it in the next episode. But she was... Candy went and like showered in the Gore's bathroom and everything after. So no, Betty was not pregnant, and this whole I want to get into it so badly right now.
Me too.
This whole case is insane, and like I said, she gets off on self-defense, and we're gonna go through in the next episode.
That's wild because who's to say that that was the truth?
Well, oh my God. See, that's why I brought up the show, because when I watched this show, I didn't know that it was based off a true story, okay? I'm just watching it. And this was like literally over a year ago that I watched the show. So I don't remember when they tell you that. I feel like I remember it being at the end of the last episode. They're like, and the real Betty Gore, blah, blah. I was like, what the fuck? Because in the show, they show this whole scene of like, they portray the whole attack.
Yeah.
And
this way?
Yes.
Like how?
Yeah. The whole show is based off the Love and Death book, which most of it is based off, they interview Candy and Alan for it.
Okay.
And it is
I'm about to go home and watch the show.
You literally watch the show and you're like, oh my fucking God, you feel bad for Candy. You're like, this poor woman.
Yeah.
Whatever. But then you think about the fact, like 41 times you're gonna hit
that's
her.
A lot. And axes are heavy as fuck. So she would have had to like wind up and come back down.
Think about how 41 long that would take. And she's a small woman. They're both small women.
Well, she was what, 29?
Like it's not like she's like a fucking Olympic
70s.
athlete.
Like I feel like they all had a very small figure in the 70s.
It's crazy. It's the whole this whole story is insane. But yeah, like when I first watched the show, and that's why I picked this, was because I watched the show and I was like, fully on the side of like, oh, this was totally self-defense or whatever. And then when you read a little bit more, you're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I still got a lot of questions, man. Like,
they're going to be answered.
I don't know. Betty does not seem like somebody that would just pick up a fucking axe and like swing it at somebody. I don't know. I mean, you never know though, because
I kind of agree, but I also think that like, I think that the way they describe her mental illness is like downplayed. I think she was in a really...
Oh yeah, she sounded like she was very
in a
depressed.
really bad place. Yeah. And then it's evident that she had obviously been suspicious of them having an affair, and I could just see like
it ruminating
she
in her mind
snapped.
and making
I don't
her
know.
just mad.
But it, I have no, obviously,
nobody
no one
will ever
knows
know.
except
Fuck.
Candy.
That's crazy.
But we're going to try and get as many answers. So next week, we're going to go over all of Candy's actions after the murder, like how she acts and what she tells people and all of that. And then we're going to go through the whole trial. And so I think for
part
today, part two.
I'm excited.
Next week, but
I'm excited for part 2.
For today, court is adjourned. Bye.
Bye. Damn.